Hi friends, welcome back to the Avocado Toast Budget. If you are new here, my name is Lexa, and today is kind of like part 2 follow-up of our Investing 101 series here. And specifically, we're going to talk about everything that you need to know step by step in order for you to go from having no money in retirement to retiring a millionaire. This series is all about helping you to build up your knowledge base about investing. That way you can take advantage of investing to build wealth and retire comfortably. Before we get started though, if you enjoy this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm, helps boost this video to the top. That way more people can find this content. So let's go ahead and get started telling you how to retire a millionaire. At the ATB, really from the start, it has always been one of my missions to not only talk about budgeting and saving money, but also growing your money and building wealth, especially because I remember I didn't really know a lot about investing, but I had seen this quote that was talking about how men are often taught about investing and growing their wealth when it comes to personal finance advice that is geared toward men, whereas personal finance advice that is geared toward women often talks about saving your money and frugality. And while both of those things are awesome, I definitely see that a lot in this space, but I also understand how scary and overwhelming it can be to get started. I really put it off for a long time because I didn't understand it. I had this misconception about what investing was supposed to be, so I want to break down some of those misconceptions, but specifically today, I want to give you step-by-step tips on how to start investing and how to grow that money to $1 million by the time that you retire. Of course, with my investing videos especially, I always put a disclaimer. This is not about trying to pick certain stocks, guess what stocks are going to work well in the stock market. This is really about long-term, consistent wealth building. So let's go ahead and tackle the first question that I hear a lot when I talk about retirement is, why do you need $1 million? $1 million often to us feels like a lot of money because we think of millionaires and we think of a rich lifestyle and lavish and buying all of these things. But in reality, having $1 million invested specifically to use for retirement is not like you are going to have $1 million a year to spend. And of course, like everything else here at the ATB, I like to find a balance between making sure that Future Lexa is taken care of and also appreciating Now Lexa and bringing joy to my life right here and right now. So I get a lot of comments that are like,
well, what if I don't make it to retirement? I'm just sitting on all of this money.
But that is not the point. I am not telling you to throw every extra dollar that you have toward investing to make sure that you can build up as much as you possibly can. Because again, I am all about balance here. I am all about being realistic. So we want to make sure that future you is taken care of in case that you do get to retirement and you're not fucked over. But we also want to make sure that you now is taken care of and you are meeting your short-term goals and enjoying your life along the way. So again, balance is key. Of course, going back to the point of why $1 million, it seems like a lot of money, but having $1 million inside of investments at retirement, again, does not mean that you are spending $1 million a year or you're living this luxurious lifestyle. On average, if you have about $1 million saved, you can expect that that's going to give you about $50,000 worth of spending money every year. And the reason that I know this is because of the rule of 25. So this rule is pretty simple. In order to get the amount that you need at retirement, you just take your expected annual expenses, times that by 25, and then that is how much you are probably going to need at retirement in order to consistently live off of your retirement funds. So again, of course, $1 million is just kind of like an estimate. This number is going to vary depending on the type of life that you want to live in retirement and what is realistic for you. So now that we have covered the basics about why $1 million matters, let's go ahead and get into what to invest in. This is probably one of my biggest questions that I get. What should I invest in? And really one of my biggest recommendations is to look into index funds. Index funds are basically just funds that are meant to match a certain market. So I like to think of them as like a basket of little pieces of individual stocks. So rather than buying one full stock, one full share of Apple, you are buying a little bit of Apple and Amazon and a bunch of different other companies. But of course, I want you to be able to make decisions on your own. So let's go ahead and weigh the pros and cons of index funds. The first con is that index funds are passive investments. They are not actively managed, such as mutual funds. So therefore, they are not designed to beat the market. They are just designed to match the market. market, which means if the market is going down, your investments are probably going down as well, but that also means if the market is going up, your investments are going up. Another thing that might be considered a con to some people is that investing inside of index funds is definitely meant to be a long-term investment. Really, I don't personally believe in short-term investing anyway. That's not going to be something that I promote here on this channel, but in case that's what you are looking for, I just want to make sure that you are well aware that the way for you to get the most out of investing, especially investing in index funds, is to plan to hold that money for at least 5 to 10 or more years. Because again, like I talked about in the first point, the market fluctuates, it goes up and down. So if you are not planning on riding out those ups and downs of the markets, you might be stuck actually losing money. However, outside of those two cons, those are really about it when it comes to index funds. So let's talk about the pros. The first pro is that they are low cost because they are not actively managed funds. You have really low fees when it comes to index funds. And this is really important because it can be really deceiving to people to see like a 1% fee on a fund, because it seems like, oh, 1% is like nothing, it's not that much. But what people don't realize is that over the course of your investing lifetime, that 1% fee can add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you might be thinking,
Okay, Alexa, but the whole point of having an active managed fund is that it's supposed to return more.
but this brings me on to like my point 2 of the pros of index funds is that oftentimes actively managed funds such as mutual funds don't actually beat the market that they plan on beating. So index funds are designed to match the market, and a lot of times they actually outperform their actively managed counterparts. So you are saving money on fees and you are making more money because they are actually doing better in the long run. And then of course, my point number 3 for index funds is that they are really easy. Index funds are designed where you just put your money in them, you let them sit, and you let them do their thing. They're not supposed to be actively managed. It's not about sitting there and tracking the market, buying, selling stocks, worrying about what everything is doing. It is all about putting money every month consistently into your retirement fund inside of these index funds and letting them do the work and letting your money grow. If you're someone who just wants to make sure that you are prepared and set for retirement, but you don't want to sit there nitpicking your individual stocks or investments, index funds are where it's at. Personally, I really like to invest in Vanguard index funds. They do really well over the long term and they have really low fees. So now that we've covered what to invest in, where should you invest? 2 of the options that you have in 2021 are going through an online brokerage account or using a robo-advisor. Online brokerage accounts are things like Fidelity or Vanguard, whereas robo-advisors are things like Ellevest or M1 Finance. The big pro when it comes to using places like Vanguard and Fidelity are that you save on fees. However, there are some roadblocks that can come in the way, especially if you're a beginner, including the fact that their interface is very clunky and kind of hard to navigate most of the time. And also they generally have higher minimums, especially when it comes to opening retirement funds. So you might have to wait until you have anywhere between $1,000 or $3,000 in order to start and open a retirement fund. And for that reason, I have chosen to use a robo-advisor, specifically M1 Finance. I absolutely love their platforms. They have no extra fees, and you can invest inside of the same things that you can invest inside of Fidelity and Vanguard because they have all of Vanguard's ETFs and index funds and all of that. I also really enjoy that M1 Finance has lower minimums for you to open up a retirement account. So actually one of the reasons when I was a beginner to investing, I was debating between opening one at Vanguard, opening one at M1 Finance, and ultimately the reason that I went with M1 Finance at first was because M1 Finance only required $500, Vanguard required $1,000. And I wanted to get started investing as soon as possible because I kind of knew myself and I knew that if I didn't get started while I still kind of had that oomph inside of me, there was a chance that I would get distracted and end up not investing and using that money for something else. And I ended up really loving the platform, and I'm so glad that I chose M1 Finance. It is really user-friendly. Again, they don't have any extra fees or cost or anything associated with the platform. And I've had really good experiences. If you want a step-by-step breakdown of how to open up a Roth IRA inside of M1 Finance, I will link that video up here and also in the description box below. So the third question that we need to ask ourselves is, how much should you invest in order to retire a millionaire? The first thing that you need to do is take into account your projected average rate of return. You're not going to be able to estimate how much you'll have at retirement depending on how much you're saving right now if you don't at least come up with an estimate. But I have a lot of questions from people about what number they should use. So personally, this is how I look at it. Generally, index funds that follow the S&P 500 have an average return rate of about 10% over time. Of course, it's really important to point out this is not a guaranteed 10% every year. The market fluctuates. Sometimes you will lose money, sometimes you will make way more than that, sometimes it'll be pretty consistent and dead on 10%, but averaged out over the last 40 to 50 years, it has returned around 10%. So that is the number that I generally use for my predictions. But you also want to make sure that you take into account everyone's favorite, inflation. So inflation generally is anywhere between like 1 to 3%, but I just average this out, and usually I subtract 2% from that 10% and I use 8% for my numbers. So where does this number come into play? After you've used the rule of 25 to calculate what your end goal number is, and you've decided what percent that you are going to use, I highly recommend that you go to bankrate.com and use their Save $1 Million calculator. From there, you can plug in different numbers, you can play around to see what is realistic for you, and if right now you are on track to being able to hit your goal of saving $1 million by retirement. You can put in your age, how much time you have until you retire or until you want to retire, and how much you think is realistic for you to invest. And this might happen where you can see that you are way ahead of your goal, or you are right on track, or you might realize that you needed to save a lot more than you thought that you would in order to reach that goal, especially if you don't have as much time as you were hoping that you would have before retirement. But don't get discouraged. I really recommend that you go back through your budget, see if there's anywhere that you can just pull a little bit extra in to invest a little bit more to help you meet those goals, and just know that something is better than nothing. Even if you don't hit that $1 million by the time that you retire, having $250,000, $500,000 is way better and puts you in a much better place than just giving up and saying F it and not investing anything. I will give you an example here for you all using my personal numbers. So this is Bankrate Save $1 Million calculator. This is what it's going to look like on your end. I will plug in my numbers under calculate. Right now I am 25. I'm gonna put in that I hope to retire by 59. I actually hope to retire before then, but this is just kind of to play around with some numbers. I do actually, this works out perfectly. I have about $10,000 invested right now. I can save about $500 a month. I am going to go ahead and put in 10%, and then I really like it here because you can put in your expected inflation rate as well. So I'll change that to 2%. Click done, and then we can see here that at 59, my estimate is that I'll have around $1.8 million. Although something that I've noticed about this calculator is that this number is not the balance after inflation. So sometimes I like to go ahead and just put this as my rate of return after inflation, put this as 0, and then this gives me a better idea. So at age of 59, after inflation, I'll have around $1.1 million with these numbers. Now, if I were using the rule of 25, my idea is that I want to live off of about $60,000 a year. So I'm actually looking at wanting around $1.5 million. So I would know if I wanted to retire at 59, I would need to put in more money than this. So this is where you can really play around, decide what is more important to you. Do you have an extra $100 a month to be putting in? Or are you going to have to be more realistic and just plan on retiring a little bit after what you said that you had? So for fun, let's just go through and I'll show you kind of how you can change this up and decide how you want to play around with these numbers. So let's say I say, okay, I want to continue living off of $60,000 a year. I only have $500 a month to put in right now. So let's say I'm just going to retire a few years later. Let's change this number back to the original 65. And when we do that, we can see that I will end up with $1.8 million, which is more than what I am wanting to live off of. So that would put me in a really good place if I planned on retiring at 65. However, let's say I really wanted to stick to that 59 number and I played around with my budget and I figured out that comfortably I can add an extra $100 a month onto there. We can see adding another $100 to invest puts me at $1.3 million at retirement at the age of 59 if I am investing investing $600 a month. This isn't quite 1.5, but this does put me in a better place if I did comfortably have that extra $100. So that is it for today's video on how to retire a millionaire. I really hope that you enjoyed and you learned something cool. If you did, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm, helps boost this video to the top. That way more people can find this content. And I will see you all next time.